Hey, welcome to Morehouse Metrology Matters, where clothing is optional. Hopefully, everybody does have clothing on though it doesn't matter. This is an inside look into the people, culture, friends, and metrology professionals. So what we're hoping to do here is do something a little bit different, an unfiltered look at running a metrology company with our friends, professionals in the industry. And first up is, many people know, Mr. Dilip Shah from E equals MC3 Solutions. Hey, Dilip.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Good. Are you wearing clothing?
Well, what do you see? It's AI generated, right?
AI generated? Yeah, that's good. So Dilip's with us as the first guest, as we had an internal audit as part of any quality program in the world of metrology. Some required, some not required. Ours requires us from NUPIC, the NUPIC audit from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, to have a independent third-party assessment and audit. And Dilip's going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk some other things metrology. So go ahead, Dilip.
Okay, all right. Thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, internal auditing is kind of interesting. Uh, just let's talk about auditing in general, just a little bit.
Hmm?
There's three kinds of auditing. Uh, I call them a first party audit, second party audit, and a third party audit. So the internal auditing is basically a first party audit. Basically, what you're doing is you're policing yourselves against a certain requirement, whatever quality system you follow. Now, the quality system could be your own generated, quality system, or complying with a standard such as yours, where you comply with ISO IEC 17025. And the second party audit is where a customer audits you, and
Right.
there you're satisfying the requirements of the customer. So when you have a new pick audit, the new pick audit is a second party audit, basically.
It's like a
And
full body, it's like a full cavity examination because they send in for our company with
yeah,
few
but they're looking
parameters on the scope.
after their interest, the interest of the nuclear industry.
Right.
And and the third party audit, the auditing entity does not have either your interest or the interest of the customer, but they're making sure that you meet the requirements of a certain standard, in this case ISO IEC 17025, which you comply with and you're accredited to. So that's just the difference in there. So the first party auditing is like you're policing yourself to make sure you comply with all the different requirements. And it could be your requirements, your own internal requirements, customer requirements, and a
Hmm.
requirement to a standard like ISO IEC 17025. And then you could have nuclear requirements, 10 CFR, and so on. So the nice thing about internal auditing is this is where you have a lot of opportunity to kind of question yourselves and improve yourselves. And a lot of people take sort of a defensive action. They get defensive about internal auditing, and they kind of, worry like, who are you guys within your own company to tell, what is right and what is wrong? I've been doing this job for so many years, and so you get that kind of resistance. But at the same time, and when you have a sort of an independent person like me, I come in and I look at it with a third set of eyes.
Or a fresh set
Um,
of eyes, because if you're in the quality system,
yeah,
you likely may not see something you need to see.
exactly. And so that's always a nice thing. And I do a lot of internal audits, and sometimes I worry. Like one of my clients have been auditing for 21 years, and I worry about the same kind of things. Like, am I going to see something different, or am I going to get too comfortable? Like, I know what these guys are doing, kind of thing. So when I do the internal audits, especially with a repeat client like that, I have to like look at it from a different view, different viewpoints. I always change it a little bit. And every now and then a client will say, well, you didn't do it like this the last time. And I said, yeah, I know that's exactly why I'm doing that. Now, for your requirement and to meet the nuclear requirements, I can't come in next year.
Nope, you cannot have the third
Yeah,
party audit by the
and I
same
think
person two two
in a
years in
way
a row.
that's a good idea because that way you don't get too familiar with the system and you don't have the same objectivity. And it's all about objectivity in an internal audit. You have to be very objective and question things in that way. Now, uh, in the ISO 9000 set of standards, the ISO registration body can send the same auditor every year. And I find that a little bit the same kind of dangers I talked about, the same person coming in and they kind of lose their objectivity, even though they're still, making sure you comply with the requirements of the standard. But you get too familiar with what an organization's doing and too, comfortable. And so there's always a danger.
It's a risk. It's a
Yeah.
unidentified risk, and people are comfortable with it because they have the same person, and
Hmm.
there's a rapport, like the bonding and rapport is usually established there. And we're comfortable
Yeah.
with you coming in because you and I are friends, though that doesn't mean my expectation when you come in to audit us is that you're harder on us because of that, because we want to be better. That's one of those
Yeah.
things. And these internal audits, when you talk about the standard, 8.8 of the standard requires it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And one of the things they kind of took away from the 17025, the 2017 standard, was they took away that audit should be independent of activities
mhm.
being audited, which was in the previous 2005 version of the standard. And the reason they took it away was the standard was written so a one person laboratory could be accredited and to accommodate that. But I think it's still a good idea. It's not like you have to do yourselves. So when you bring in somebody outside, that is a good idea. And because how can you audit yourself? Because a lot of times I do things where, I'll create a spreadsheet for something and I can't see my mistakes and I think it's perfect. And I give it to a second set of eyes and they'll point out, oh, I think this is wrong here. And that's exactly what internal audit does. Uh, uh, a
Yep.
different set of eyes look at things differently. And the other thing about internal audits is there are activities you do where you go from point A to point B, and you're doing it one way, and there may be infinite different ways of doing it from going from point A to B. And having a second set of eyes, outside eyes, tells, ask you, why are you doing it this way? And have you considered doing it this way? Because I think it can save you this or that. So it gives you opportunities for improvement. And that is always a good thing, also, because
Hmm.
organizations are always looking for ways to do things efficiently.
And they
And
should,
yeah.
and not relying on people. I mean, you're going to have to rely on people, but with us,
Hmm.
you came in and I think you were ready to write a deficiency or finding on the software
Yeah.
validation. until you talked to our programmer and then said,
Hmm.
yeah, what you talk about that, because that's a good example where we're sitting here, an auditor comes in, Dilip talks to our programmer, and now it's not a finding. It's what did you observe? It became an observation,
Yeah. So
and yeah,
let's talk about that because originally, I was dealing with Ashley, your
quality
quality
man.
manager,
Yep, and she'll be on.
and she was, telling me these things, and obviously she was showing me things that she was not familiar with, and obviously I made a conclusion. It's a finding, but when we talked to the actual programmer, he was able to explain it in a much better way. And it became from a finding to an observation as an opportunity for improvement.
Right.
And it was kind of the other thing is it's also a learning opportunity for an auditor too, because auditors should not come with a closed mind. The auditor should have an open mind, and that's a danger a lot of auditors fall into because they've been doing this and they think this is the only way to do that. And that's what I on this validation thing. But Ashley was not the right person to explain that, right? Because
Nope.
you have to look at the stakeholder. The
Hmm.
stakeholder is the important person to interview. And
Yep.
so that was a learning opportunity in that way. And it was a good outcome in that way. So that was very good. And in the 17025 world, validation is always an issue. There's a method validation that's an issue, and then there's the software validation. And I don't think many labs do that well.
No.
And it is one of the things that is a weakness. And the other part of the weakness is I don't think accrediting bodies know how to audit that well or
Hmm.
don't have too many guidelines too. So it's the luck of the draw on who your assessor is.
I mean,
And
let's discuss that, Dylan, because
yeah,
realistically, right, if you were to audit it and go down the trail, it would take a while. You came out for 3 days,
yeah,
right, just by yourself for 3 days. You know our system pretty well
yeah,
before you came out, and it took 3 days. A2LA or NavLab, and not saying anything. Like I said, I want this to be an honest podcast. They're there for 2 days,
yeah.
so
Uh,
and it's a sampling.
yes. So
So, yeah, go ahead. They just you don't
auditing
have
is
enough
a
time.
sampling activity, and even though sampling is 95% effective, then if you were to look at the whole system, and I remember originally when I was establishing the logistics for this audit, and Ashley said, I'm going to send you everything you want, all our documentation. And I said, no, Ashley, then I'll be doing 100% inspection and I'd be overwhelmed and I'll miss a lot of things because then I'll say, oh my God, I got to do all these things. So,
Right.
what happens in auditing? It's an art also, it's an acquired art. The more auditing you do, the better you get at it. And then you know what to sample. And one of the things I do when I do the internal audit for any organization is I start out with what findings they had from the previous assessments. And that kind of gives me an idea that, okay, somebody who sampled your process, an accrediting body, a customer like NewPick, they found these issues with your processes.
Hmm.
So okay, those are points for weaknesses. And so let's look at what you've done. Have you put a band-aid to that, or you actually come up with good corrective action with root causes identified and taken care of it in that way? And so that is a good start for any good auditing, internal auditing, activity that you do. And then from there, you kind of look at different things, and the process auditing is much better. If I was to do an auditing by listing and go with clause, 4.1 of the 1705 standard to 8.9, I would probably not find anything because you have a quality system in place which
Right.
meets all those requirements and the additional A2LA and NAVLAP requirements. But doing the process requirement, now it's how you implemented the system and how you're following the system. And that is the critical, path to doing auditing and finding out, is the system effectively implemented? Is everybody following it? And I always say that ideally, um, if you're following the system, anybody can come at any time and audit you. And I remember like nobody said anything, like you guys didn't prepare for the audit.
Mm-mm.
Everybody just walked in, and I like that because uh, the clients that I do audit for, it's usually like that. You walk in, and if you have to prepare for an audit, that means you are not really prepared and not following the system.
Right.
There are some, gaps in the system that you're not following, and that's always a danger sign for me. So if somebody says, "Oh yeah, we got to prepare for the audit," and then I said, "No," then you're not ready. Uh, you
Yeah.
have
Our
to follow it.
preparation was where do you want to go to dinner?
Yeah, that was about it, and that was the hardest choice, and those things are okay with and anything else that came in, and the other thing during internal audits is I tell the whoever the auditees are, is don't hide anything. It is our own processes. Everybody has a weakness. I've never been to an organization that doesn't have anything. And as mature as a system you have, uh, there's always something or another, because besides having a mature system, you have turnover in
Yep.
personnel.
Yep.
So there's that difference. And with that turnover in personnel, it brings in other challenges. But challenges can be opportunities because that person can come in and says, "Why are we doing this way? Uh, could we do it this way?" And this gives you opportunities because now you got somebody new that is doing it a different way. And then
Yep.
you have to look at it and say, "Okay, that's a good idea. Now, does it satisfy the requirements of the standard?" And if it does, then yes. If that's a better, efficient way of doing things, it removes some roadblocks, then let's do it that way.
I
So,
love when we hire new people, Dilip, just because it's fresh
yeah,
eyes, right?
yeah,
They're not biased. In about 60 days, you get biased. Oh, this is the
hmm
way it's done here.
yeah,
But before those 60 days, it's why are we doing this?
yeah,
Right? Why? And then training is something that we
hmm
still, you audited everything. Training is something that I still want to improve upon. And we want to improve upon everything. It's
yeah,
one of those things. You're never perfect. The goal is not going to be perfection because you spin your wheels trying to achieve it. The goal is to always be better.
yeah. And training is an activity, where you have different kind of training.
Oh, yep,
You have classroom training, sort
yep,
of. You have theoretical training, which is pretty much a classroom training. Then you have hands-on training,
yep.
and then yeah, you do all that, and then it's the effectiveness of training.
It's on your own, yeah. Because
Yeah,
when people come in, we have all these standards here. Here's the set of standards to read, and
yeah,
we're currently breaking that up because it's the day one here. Just sit at a desk and read standards. That's horrible.
yeah,
Though that's where we're trying to break it up and say, all right, read E74, and then somebody goes through and does an E74 calibration with them. Then they actually get to put the equipment in and rotate it and try different things. And this is why we're doing and try to explain
yeah,
this is why we do it this way.
yeah. And a
Takes
lot
a
of
while.
these, ASTM is a good organization. They write a lot of good standards. But yeah, pick a standard like E74, which is your bread and butter, really.
One of them. Yeah,
And
they're
but it's a difficult standard. You
no,
put
yes.
somebody new and say, here it is. It's pretty intimidating. So
Yeah. I know there's
you
a lot of things that do not make sense for day one.
yeah, so it's kind of easy to break it down into different parts. And again, during the auditing, you're sampling and you're not going to look at from, page one,
Right.
paragraph one to, the last page. And then there's also a lot of reference addendums and appendices and things like that. And so when you're doing the auditing, you kind of, again, sampling and taking a snapshot and say, end of the day, I audited this activity, and did we meet the desired objective? The end result, which in most cases in a calibration lab, the end result, your product is your calibration certificate.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's my problem with audits.
yeah,
You can have everything in the standard. Are you producing good data? Is the
yeah,
question. And a lot of these labs have the parameters, they have multiple
hmm,
parameters and they have unengaged people. We've seen it. It's one of the things you go into places, your clients, I'm sure you've seen it and talk about some industry problems, but yeah, unengaged people, what does that do? Right? They
yeah,
just go
and
through the motions. They're not
yeah,
going to
there
find stuff.
and
Data is what it is.
the problem is, technology is getting complicated,
Oh yeah.
and we have automation. So now we have button pushers, basically. You do this, you do this.
Hmm.
And software makes the decisions whether it's a pass or fail. And that is okay. I mean, automation's great. And we need automation. This morning, there's a great guy. I always watch the first thing I do when I have breakfast. He has like a 5-minute snippet. Peter Zahan is on YouTube. And he talks about all the different issues, the world politics,
Oh,
geopolitical
yep.
issues, and so on. This morning, he had an issue just on AI and says, where is AI? And he went into just in that 5-minute discussion on all the nitty gritty on the AI. And his basic summary in that 5 minutes was it all depends on the chips. And we don't have the chips to
Oh
build
yeah.
the AI. Okay. So what we're saying is just the buzzword right now. And next week, I'm going to go to CES. And I know,
Bless you.
I know the AI is going to be a buzzword.
Oh, absolutely. NVIDIA, what did I just read about NVIDIA today? But
NVIDIA, yeah.
yeah, they have I'm looking at.
Now, the NVIDIA chips are basically designed for, they're not designed for AI, they're designed for multi-function, multitasking for graphics application. So they're not even designed for AI but that's the only thing available for AI right now. And when the new generation of AI chips comes in,
Yeah.
uh, and the amount of multitasking and multi-referencing, cross-threading they do, it's going to require double the amount of energy, electrical power that we're using. And his forecast was 2040 would be there. And there's a lot of things that can happen between now and 2040.
A
And
lot.
and the only company that really makes the chips is TSMC in Taiwan. And if for some reason invasion of Taiwan comes in, all bets are off on AI in that respect. And
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot there. What
yeah,
I was thinking about was the AI new Jetson computer was the one I was trying to think about.
mhm,
Though where AI can be, since we're going that way and talking about internal audits, is one of the things we did, at least I did, as I was showing Ashley, is you can dump all your quality procedures, your manual, and everything into AI. You can dump the 17025 standard and all the other standards. You could say compare these and see if there's any weakness. This is
yeah,
not the same as an internal audit, though it's a good practice to just say, hey, did I miss something as far as the things? But that doesn't critique, oh, your management's weak. Oh, let me just put in a section on management until you actually implement management. Like we have weekly meetings where we're
yeah,
always saying these are our issues. This is what we need to solve. They become to-dos or they become rocks because we're operating EOS. But that's something when you go into organizations still up the just the management procedures, things you've seen over the years, like people using
yeah.
for temperature bath, people using
Mhm.
the wrong water and
Yeah,
costing them thousands of dollars. And
and what happens is a lot of times organizations like where they're implementing 17025 and they have sort of a hodgepodge of quality system.
oh, yeah.
And that hodgepodge of quality systems based on what I call a knee-jerk reaction, because somebody found this issue, so we're going to write a procedure to address that. Well, when we wrote this procedure, we contradicted the other two procedures that reference that process, and so on. And pretty soon you have a bunch of procedures contradicting this and that, and so on. And I had a new client, I got them accredited last year, and that's what they did because they didn't have a quality system, but they had to go through the certification body audits like the UL and the
Mhm.
Intertech audits. So they had a system based on that. And I look at it and I said, you know what? Let's throw this all in the dustbin. And we're going
Sometimes
to,
you need to.
yeah,
I mean, that's one of the things you're talking about. That's a pet peeve I have. And you cobble together when I work with, some of our customers, they say, well, look at our uncertainty budgets for force or do this. And I don't want to look at them because someone has cobbled something together. Someone has
yeah,
typically they've left the company and then now they do not know the people that have taken over do not know what they did. And they're expecting someone to come in and try to figure it out. And that's at some point you just say, let's just throw it all out and do something that's scalable because you'll have documents galore. You have three or four different spreadsheets referencing this. This tab goes to
yeah,
here. It's you've seen it, and then you have if you have a system of four or five quality managers stacked on because one leaves for another job, and it
yeah.
just becomes a freaking mess.
And
So
I mean, we looked at the one budget that, you and I looked at during this audit.
yeah.
And it was
Mhm.
looked at by other very competent people.
Three other competent people and
Yeah.
myself. So I'm not competent, but yeah, this
And it was still good to look at, and
yeah.
we were able to tweak it because
Yep.
at the end of the day, it has to make sense to you. Uh, why we did what we did, and what is the proof and justification behind claiming these numbers.
Yeah.
And
And there's not good guide. There was not good guide. We had to dig because there was
yeah,
not really good guidance out there. There's not a
and even
how-to.
now, I still have to like look at something. Uh, my problem is I've got too many references
Hmm.
in book form, and this is where AI should be helpful because if all of those were digitized, then I could say, yeah, look for this information.
Well, you can. This is, oh,
And
okay. If you have PDFs, because you can load all the
yeah,
PDFs into ChatGPT and say, hey, find me stuff on
yeah,
ratiometric measurements using a Fluke 8588. Because that's what we were, I mean, that's
yeah,
what we were doing. There's a floor. And what people end up doing is they claim these uncertainties. And then well, I use this to transfer this and that. And you get into it, Dilip and I talk. There's companies out there that are claiming uncertainties that are equal to NIST,
yeah,
which is insane because you just can't you can't get there. The 8588 is a great instrument, but the spec they have a constant, and you use that
yeah.
constant. It's like resolution's another thing. If
And
you're doing
uh,
budgets right, resolution's never going to give you
uh,
typically parts per million at
Fluke
low
has a
measurements.
Fluke has a good set of documentation.
Yep,
They're very good
very
at it.
good,
But
very good.
the problem is they can't account for all the scenarios. And the example we had doesn't necessarily fits
Nope.
what you do, but it's the best example closest to what you do.
Yep.
And that's always a problem. And so you know, but those are the opportunities where you have another fourth set of eyes looking at it and saying, all right, let's take a dig at it. And even now I'm somewhere in the back of my mind, I will have the reference. And during the holidays, I kind of go look, and I had another set of documentation, some old books from NIST that my mentor Phil Stein had given to me that I'd forgotten about that I found. And that kind of information is, you know, not digitized. They will never be digitized unless somebody takes time digitizing page by page and converting into AI. Google started doing this like several years ago, almost 20 some years ago, but they ran into copyright issues, and
Yep.
I think they got done. But that would have been really interesting to have that kind of database of digitizing. I think at that time their whole uh, aim was they wanted to digitize every written record that was out there.
I think we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I put some of ours in, our records about the proving ring. I put in that were typed up, and we'll have an
Hmm.
article coming out this year because the proving ring turns 100.
Yeah.
So it turns 100 in May. Though you can use AI. AI can be a tool.
Hmm.
It's a tool in your tool belt. It is not a substitute for somebody coming in or somebody
Hmm.
that's skilled to come in and audit your system. It's certainly can point in the right direction on what do we need to do, but though it's not going to change your culture, it's not going to change the way you manage, it's not going to do all
Yeah.
this. It's just going to be that helpful
Yeah.
tool.
The AI is a good, I would say, from the internal audit perspective, a good assistant to an auditor.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a first party auditor, second party, or third party audit,
Hmm.
like I mentioned. It's just like when I audit and I say, let me see, it applies to which clause of the standard. The
Yep.
AI is going to do that for me pretty fast and cross reference and say, yeah, you're right, or no, you're not, or you can't write because it meets the requirements of the standard. So,
Right.
from that perspective, AI would be very good at that.
It's
And
also good for OSHA, Philip, because
yeah,
we used it for OSHA, and we were specifically saying where are we weak with
hmm,
our documentation and our guidelines. We want our people to be safe, and it gave us three really good recommendations. Is it going to save us with an injury to someone someday? Maybe. We don't know, but those recommendations were good enough that Ashley and I sat down and we were like,
yeah,
yeah, this could prevent an injury, and we were weak. So we can do some training, we can put some roping, we can do the other stuff around that, and
and
that's because that's the last thing you want is someone to get
and
hurt.
it's interesting because you mentioned that because the one thing when I went to the lab during the audit was I told Ashley and I said I always have safety in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
That's one thing 17025 does not mention
Nope.
anywhere
Nope.
in there. But I say you always have safety in the back of your mind. And so I did mention about a couple of areas where opportunities for improvement in there. And I'll give an example on an internal audit. There was a lab that I was auditing. This was several years ago, where they were flowing high volume gas flow using nitrogen. And the lab was 2 levels down in the basement. It's a very small area, no ventilation. And you have high flow rates using nitrogen. You're going to fill that room with nitrogen, and it's going to pretty much evacuate all the air.
Right.
And it was a safety issue, so I mentioned that. And the result was they put in 2 oxygen sensors in there. So 2 because of redundancy,
Yep.
because if one failed, there was still the other one that was out there.
That's
And
huge.
they immediately stopped any work that was going to be in there. But they'd been doing that for years, and luckily, like nothing had happened. And that was kind of accidental because just 2 weeks before that, when I audited that lab, I had seen 2 workers died of asphyxiation when they were cleaning out an oil tanker,
Mm.
and they went in the tanker to clean it out, and they flooded with nitrogen. So if there's any gasoline in there, there's no flammable, something to source uh, the the flames. And so sometimes those things are just right opportunity where you say, yeah, I found this, so I'm going to look for it ahead. So internal auditing, again, bringing in a new set of eyes is good, and bringing in somebody that is new, but experience also is important. So fresh set of eyes, but experience is important in other areas. Because what happens is when you have your, the new pick audit, or your, the calibration audit with the 17025, assessors come in and they look at the disciplines. Now, a lot of assessors have, multidiscipline experience, so they can connect the dots. But sometimes if you have just, let's say you're just a dimensional person and you have no electrical experience, then you can't connect the dots. And as you know, like just in force, there's a lot of electronics. The instrumentation's all
Hmm.
electronics. Even though force is a thermodynamic activity, it's there. So anymore, there is no like a discipline you can put in a silo and kind of work without looking at kind of cross contamination of disciplines is probably the best word I could think of. And that is also important. That so whenever I think about uh, an auditing body from a specific industry coming in, of course, there'll be most likely, second party audits. So they'll look after
Right.
their interests, but then they don't think about other things, that
Mm-mm.
what they do and how that could affect other things.
Yep. And we've
So
had we've had some very good ones that have been very helpful that
yeah,
all the time. I mean, this is why we have dual accreditation. We have the internal audit. New pick comes in. That's a team of 6 to 8 people that they're there for, or they always schedule 5 days, but they're always there 4 days. And the internal audit, just having somebody come in to look at everything is more informal. I mean, when you're actually being audited, I think people feel a little bit differently, Dilip, than in an internal audit. Like if you come in and you've hired somebody, you've
hmm
hired them to help you, right? When Atole, NavLab, PGO, whoever
Mhm.
that comes in, I mean, they're coming in with a checklist, and
Yeah,
they're coming in more, are you meeting this criteria? And they all, a lot of the people are really great, and they offer, opportunities for improvement and all that. But what I'm getting at is that internal audit, you can just cut the
Mhm.
complete crap out of everything and
Yeah,
say, look, this is my recommendation is this. Um, this is what it is. Like you did with us. You had what you have with us. You had zero findings and some observations for us to improve. Is that
yeah. I
where we
had, I
came
think,
out?
about 7 observations and zero
Right.
findings. And like we mentioned earlier,
Yep.
there was going to be a couple findings, but upon further investigation, they turn into observations, and uh, which is okay. And I sometimes worry, and I was worrying too, like, did I do a good job? Because there are no findings, and uh, and that is when you have a mature system. What happens is you have no major findings, but you have more opportunities for improvement
Hmm.
in those observations. Like, I know Ashley has her own system, and I have my own system. I like
Right.
my setup. And a lot of those things, I mean, I didn't even document. And I said, okay, Ashley, if you do this in Excel, this will make your job easier, and you can
Right.
maintain all this in one tab instead of having to maintain 3 or 4 tabs in an Excel spreadsheet. And so that was the other, good thing to do in that
Yeah.
respect.
There's some cost
Yeah,
recovery there in that
yeah,
sense. Somebody's doing something. I didn't
mm,
see it. No one else sees it. They're doing, and now they're going to save time for
yeah,
doing that, and they're going to have more time to focus on improving the system. So
yeah,
that's huge. And as we progress, like into the years and everything else, it's going to be, you're going to need to simplify systems. You should have core process document, all your core processes should be
yeah,
documented. You should remain flexible, because that's one of the other things that happens with all of this. You become into a bureaucracy where you can't do anything unless you have a procedure. Right, Dilip, you see this too. Unless you have a procedure, people go, they're like, "What do we do with this?" So you kind of have to
yeah,
be somewhat fluid with education and everything else, and continued learning. And that internal
yeah,
audit is one of those processes that allows continued learning. Is
yeah.
what
So
really what I
so
want to
I
say.
I grew up with the ISO 9000 world. When the first ISO 9000 standard came out in 1987, the company I work for, we were going to go for it. And it required you did everything and you
Hmm.
documented everything. Now, whether it required, but that was the perception. And so we had 2 locations, one in Akron, Ohio, other in Swindon, England. In Akron, Ohio, I had a 3-inch binder. Back then, it was all paper. And in Swindon, England, they had 3 shelves of documentation. Same system. We
Right.
made the same product. We did the same activity and everything. And that's the difference you could have, and meeting the requirements. And at one time later, we became an independent company, and I became the worldwide QA director. And I went to England, and I pretty much took those shelves and brought a dumpster and put it all in there. And we said we're going to use the Akron system, and we're going to say Akron/Swindon. So the other thing is efficiencies, the documentation and those
Yep.
things. And so when I was auditing, there was times where Ashley had to like go and click on 2, 3 tabs, and that's where I kind of said, "Okay, Ashley, you could
Yep.
probably do this, and then you could just let Excel sort it." So that's your cheap AI, the sorting
Yep.
part, right?
Yep. And how many times do you do that throughout the
Yeah.
course of a week? And then you look at your times. If it's 10 minutes a week, 50 weeks a year, that's
Hmm.
that's considerable, and people don't think about this, right? This is,
Yeah.
yeah, I just do it. But anyway, I hope that those out there, I mean, this is our first go at this. We're going to have people, different people on, people internal, just talk about metrology in general, running a company and all types of different topics. But this one on, I wanted to bring Dilip in on internal audits, just because it was such a good experience for us to have, and it's always has been, to have somebody come in and do an internal audit, as it's much less painful than the actual audits by the accredited organizations, because of the fact that we have all of these observations for improvement, and that will improve our efficiencies. And if you're thinking about it, I would urge anybody to find people out there. And Dilip, we're good places for, if somebody's thinking about, like, okay, I do my own internal audit, but this is, I really want a fresh set of eyes. Do you have places that you recommend that they might
Um,
look to?
as far as auditing resources, like
Yeah,
people,
yeah, people like,
yeah, the best thing I think is if you're already accredited. A lot of the assessors do the kind of activity like I do. They do internal audits, so there'll be resources in that respect. You want somebody. I think the best resources is word of mouth,
right,
um, and it's like that everywhere. Networking. Uh, so it's kind of giving a shameless plug for organizations like NCSLI. Yeah, go join NCSLI, attend the
yep,
local regional meetings, ask people and ask them,
mm-hmm,
do you know somebody? And you will get the best resources. I kind of tend to worry like, people advertising their services. And back when there was still a paper, well, Quality Progress magazine of ASQ in the back that classified kind of ads. And you see a lot of consultants and resources. Not to say they're all bad, but sometimes you wonder about, the services because you're taking a chance. When you hear word of mouth from somebody at networking meetings like this, they've either had experience or they've had good things, and you're kind of reducing your risk of getting a bad internal auditor.
yeah. And
And
yeah, there is a risk to that, because a bad internal auditor could come there, make you change your uncertainty budgets to something that are unrealistic. They
yeah,
could mess you up with the system. So you really, yeah, you really do want somebody that has the right experience and has
yeah,
done this before.
yeah,
So
and
we've seen that. Philip, you and I
yeah,
have both seen that, and we've
yeah,
cursed some
and
people
and
out
there's
because of it.
always like a lot of the people in my profession are consultants too, so they go with the aim of like, okay, I'm going to get future consulting work, and I think that's a wrong approach to do that. And you want to be sure, like, yeah, you do find things that
Mhm.
you would do differently, but you let whoever you're auditing make that decision because, like I said, you can go from A to B in infinite number of ways. Just because you're going this way and I like my way better doesn't mean that's the wrong way you're doing things. It
Right.
may be that my way may be efficient, so I may suggest it. Then it's up to you to make that decision because, um, when you're there as an internal auditor, you're there for 3 days or whatever amount of time you're there.
Hmm.
And you're thinking about this one activity, and the company, the organization has a million activities happening.
Oh, there's
And,
always opportunity. No
and
lab, there's no
yeah,
lab out there that doesn't have opportunity for
yeah.
improvement. There's
And they have
not, no one's perfect.
prioritize it is the main thing.
Yep.
And you can't tell them that. They have to make that decision. Um,
Yep. And some are much better than others, and some are doing it much better than others. You get to see it. And it's cool
yeah,
because you take someone like Dilip, he goes to see other labs and you get ideas. The people that have done it for a while
Yeah.
that want to learn, get all these ideas from other labs, and you see people doing things differently, and that's cool.
Hmm.
And AI is going to be cool. Like I said, we're going to
Yeah.
see more and more AI coming to the forefront, and the validation is going to be fun too, because I don't know if people are going to try to use AI to validate everything or not. But that's in the future. So anyway, I want to thank you, Dilip, for being on our first episode, and a little bit of wrap up here. Internal audits. MSC, NCSLI, A2LA has their tech forum,
Conference. Yeah.
their conference. Yeah, talk to the people in attendance, the other labs. Everybody should be, in at least my experience, and probably yours too, Dylan. Everybody's
Mm,
pretty open. I mean, if you go to somebody and
yeah.
say, "Hey, just wondering," blah blah blah.
Hmm.
I'm thinking about internal audits. Do you guys, does your company have anybody, and do you like them, and whatever? And then you'll start getting names, and you'll start getting names of
Yeah.
really good people.
Yeah.
And it's only going to help better your company and your measurements. Because in the end, it is about better measurements. We want to do
Yep.
something that's meaningful.
Make
So
it a safer world.
make it a safer world. And don't really want just a button push and to
Yeah.
not look at this stuff, because everything's different. All these measurements are some are more critical than others, but they're all different. And people buy things. I just heard the other day about um, structural ropes that they look fine on the inside, but the actual fibers, or look fine on the outside, but the actual fibers on the
Hmm.
inside are not rated for their capacities. And
Yeah.
guess what? People buy them. The other thing that I heard is the medical screws that might come out, that people that get medical implants, that they're fake screws that are going into their body. And
Mm.
there's a thought that they might just pitch the entire stock,
Yeah.
because yeah, they disintegrate in there, and you can't tell, and it's like $15,000 a screw. And if you're one of the people that have one of the, you'll have pain probably for the rest of your life if you
Yeah.
have a fake screw in your back. So it does matter. It can
Yeah.
impact you greatly. And hopefully you could have people come in internal audits. It's not going to solve all your problems, but it will make you better. Um, so Dilip, what are you watching as we conclude? What do you recommend? But people out there, we talked about internal audits. We've had Dilip on Metrology Today podcast. You get to know Dilip. So what do you recommend for people? They want to.
Well, recently, I guess the best action movie was Carry On.
Yep. Yep.
And the TSA, and I travel a lot. And remember, TSA is a sampling activity again.
Yep. Hmm.
And so there's a lot of sampling going on. And I always think about it. And here I'm going to go to CES next week, and I'm going to fly first time for this year, my first flight in this year. And so looking forward to that. But yeah, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, science fiction
Yep.
and AI. AI, I think, is going to have a big future in metrology and in everywhere else.
For sure.
And I would, Peter Zeihan, Zeihan, is on YouTube. And he talks about a lot of issues, a lot of future geopolitical issues. He talks about every subject. And he gives like 5 minute things, and a very knowledgeable person, just kind of interesting to read, listen to, and get a perspective on a lot of things that's happening in the world. But today he had AI, and it made a lot of sense to me. So those are some of the things I would recommend.
And book wise, there's an old book. I think what quality is isn't free. The Philip Crosby book.
Crosby, yeah,
Is it quality
quality.
isn't free, or quality is still free? Uh,
Quality is free. I
is
think that's
quality
the,
is free. Quality
yeah,
is free is the classic
yeah.
work. If you want to read
And
something
always
older that's really
remember
good.
Deming's 14 points of management. Uh, Organizations that implement Deming's 14 points of management uh, really do well. So you should think about that from the lab management perspective. He had some,
Yeah, there's some good things in there. I have a little bit of disagreement because of the flexibility and some of the
yeah,
things in there. But if you make it modern day, managing
yeah,
1 minute manager, there's some other stuff. We'll have another talk at some
yeah,
point where we should debate Deming and we could talk control
yeah,
charts too. So Schuhart and all of that. But yeah,
yep.
yeah. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks for
Okay,
being on.
it's my
For people,
pleasure. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.